where's the AI component to that? Like what are you doing, with you and your team, to like what are you taking out of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I wouldn't say we're using AI because that's probably more of the top end of general intelligence. For the listeners, the difference, what I would say, between AI and sort of basic machine learning and data is that AI would probably have more conceptual intelligence. We're not really using that. We don't need it at this stage of what we're doing. But like a lot of, if you look at, for example, that app on your phone, that delivery app, that's not really using AI. That's using a combination of machine learning at best, but mostly data and pattern recognition. So I would say, if you lift the hood on what a lot of what people call AI today, single digits of that is real AI, maybe 1 or 2%, but maybe 40, 50% of that is machine learning, but the rest is just basic pattern recognition, which is basically, if this, then that, right? Which is just very basic. If you're a coder, you can write a script with that without any kind of learning. It doesn't learn. So that's the kind of stuff that we use, mostly, identifying patterns, and then, a small part of that learning on top of that, the machine learning. Let me tell you how that works. So obviously we do podcasts. I think you have to approach it and say, okay, what are you going to apply this automation to? Are you going to have a bot on the podcast talking to Joe here? Hopefully not. That's kind of what people would naturally think the application of automation is, right? That it's about automating everything, about applying machine learning to everything. But I like the story. There was an apocryphal tale of Winston Churchill, who was asked during the war, and this is apocryphal, so the sources are very vague. He was asked during the war to cut budgets to education and to culture and arts because they could then fund the war effort. And he turned around and said, then what are we fighting for? And I think it's the same with automation, is that we have to ask, what are we automating for? We shouldn't be automating the human touch here. We shouldn't be using data to replace that. You and me, Joe and Graham talking now, that will never go away. But what we should use the data for is to automate all the heavy lifting that gets us here. So that's everything from, finding your podcast, to seeing if there's a good match, to communicating with you, to understanding my key talking points from all the podcasts that I've done, building data sets and profiles and matching those patterns with podcast hosts. So that's automate to elevate, automate the work to elevate the flow. And this is flow,
and so now I get it, because you're automating the network building. At the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're building our network of professionals that we can lean on and learn from. I tell people every time I do a podcast, it's like I'm continuing my education. It's like a 1-hour college course with someone that shares the desire to gain knowledge with me for an hour. And you're just connecting the people that could gain the most knowledge or ability with each other grouped together. Did I get it with your explanation?
Yeah, absolutely. To that connecting part, there's a lot of logistics involved, right?
Yeah.
You're getting messages.
Exactly.
Messages going backwards and forwards, is like what Joe talks about and what I talk about. Is it a good match? Are your listeners and my listeners a good match? There's all the logistics involved, which in a way it's a bit like wedding planning, isn't it? If you're a wedding planner, you don't want to see the wedding planner on the day. If you see the wedding planner on the day, that's bad news. Something's wrong. You just want them to kind of just go over there in the background and let everybody do their thing. And that's kind of like, we're doing our thing now, but all the wedding planning has gone on in the background, and they've just kind of done all that work, to get us to this point, that connection, that networking, right? So there's a lot of data and pattern recognition that can be used to make the wedding planning much better. And I think that's kind of where you do it. You know, in any business, there's a big chunk of it which is work, right? And it gets in the way of flow. You know, it gets in the way of the human part.